My opinion is that she did have indeed a mental disease or a defect. That's a legal construct, not a DSM-5 one, but she had bipolar disorder with postpartum psychoses. In addition, she was unable to conform her behaviors to the rule of law, and she had no appreciation for the wrongfulness of her act.
That was Dr. Paul Zeisel, the forensic psychologist for the defense, offering his opinion to these jurors that Lindsay Clancy was suffering from bipolar disorder and the throes of a postpartum psychotic break when she strangled her 3 children to death in January of 2023. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for being with us on this Wednesday afternoon. We're watching together this trial for Lindsay Clancy, a 36-year-old woman, former labor and delivery nurse. She used exercise bands to kill 5-year-old Cora, 3-year-old Dawson, and 8-month-old Callan before she attempted suicide, according to the defense, leaving her confined to a wheelchair. Clancy told Zeisel that a male voice told her to kill her kids and then herself. And prosecutor Shannon Buckingham has zeroed in on Clancy's, quote, intrusive thoughts during her cross-examination of the doctor.
So from all of the records that you reviewed of her treatment and all of the interviews with her family, who did she tell that she heard voices telling her to kill herself?
I believe she told family members.
Which family members?
I believe she may have said that to her mother. She, I believe, told her husband that she felt like killing herself as well.
In the records with the providers, you're aware, you've reviewed them all and you've sat through all of their testimony. You're aware that when she described intrusive thoughts, she never referred to them as a voice telling her to kill herself, did they? Did she?
No.
Now, prosecution, even investigators in this case, threw out a theory that perhaps this doctor told Lindsay Clancy about voices, and that symptom is something that she mentioned because of his prompting. He has denied that. Let's get you back inside of the courtroom. The sidebar is over. I'm picking it up with that cross-examination by the Commonwealth.
Go ahead, counsel.
So the question, I believe, was, did you review a report of Dr. Resnick in all your sources of information and before you came to a conclusion about diagnosis?
No, I did not.
Well, one moment, sorry. On page 4 of your report, where you...
One second. Okay, I'm sorry, counsel.
On page 4 of your report, where you list the sources of information, you do identify as number 24, forensic psychiatric evaluation of Philip J. Resnick from 9/27/24. Do you not?
I do.
And so that's something you reviewed.
I didn't draw my opinion.
That wasn't a question, sir.
Well,
All right, hold on. Ask the question again. Go ahead.
Did you review his report?
That's not the question.
All right, almost an immediate sidebar there and a bit of snarkiness. Let's see what our guest thinks. We have joining us now from Los Angeles, trial attorney Silva Megerdician is with us. Silva, how are you today? And tell me about what you think of how this cross-examination is going. It has gotten more and more tense.
It has. First of all, Julia, you know I adore you. Thank you so much for having me. Great coverage on this. Okay, look, I said before, our DA isn't the most, the DA for the Commonwealth isn't the most likable. She's very, at times, quite snarky in the cross-examination questions that we're seeing. But again, she's doing what she's supposed to do. Her whole goal is to make this expert that Reddington wants the jury to see as an absolute expert, as the person that is providing education to this jury, when all of the people who took care of Lindsay could not. What this DA is trying to do is really make him look a little bit fumbling, that he doesn't know exactly what he's saying, that his opinions are, whether, not clearly based on the records that he read. Him forgetting exactly what a particular person said, it can be troublesome for the defense.
Yeah, it really can. And like you said, that's the point of this cross-examination. They are done with that sidebar. Let's go back in and listen.
Dr. Resnick's report prior to authoring your report or coming to your conclusions about diagnosis.
I reviewed part of that report. And in my report, I perused through the reports. I did not review all of that report from Dr. Resnick or Dr. Spinelli, for that matter.
Okay. Now, in talking about your review of records, you indicated that there are several thousand pages of Tewksbury Hospital records, correct?
7,001 page.
And did you review all of those?
I would say I looked through them, but I did not read every word on every page. They do have a tendency to hang together and are replicative as well.
Were you aware that on May 26, 2023, that the defendant was observed by staff in a note stating that she was visible along the unit hallways, self-propelling her wheelchair with her one-to-one staff, that she had a visit with her mother who brought dinner for her, they ate and played games during the visit? Are you aware of that?
On May 26th.
May 26th of 2023.
May 23. So 3 years ago and a few months? I don't know that. I don't remember.
That would have been approximately 4 months after the incident and on the date of Callan's first birthday, right?
Yes, but you asked if I remember that event, and I don't.
You don't, or you do?
I don't remember that she was seen with her mother on that day who brought food, and she was seen using a wheelchair to travel down the hallway at the hospital. I don't remember.
If I tell you that was read from page 176 of the Tewksbury Hospital records, would you agree with that?
I would not doubt that.
And on December 24th of 2023, were you aware that the defendant was observed at Tewksbury, monitored on one-to-one for safety, that she accepted medication, meals, and snacks, she spent time in the TV room or sitting outside her room, utilizing phone, and visited with family? Do you recall that, reading that note on page 613 of the Tewksbury records?
Of 2023?
Yes.
Honestly, I don't.
And that would have been Cora's birthday.
Okay.
But would you agree with me that if I read that from page 613 in the records, that would be within that 7,001 page of the record?
I would not doubt that.
How about on January 24th, 2024, where she's observed in a note from Tewksbury State Hospital on page 674, saying, where the note reads, patient was visible in the milieu, engageable with both staff and select peers. Patient accepted select medications as her baseline, that she was pleasant during interactions, self-propelling in wheelchair in the halls, spending much of the morning and early afternoon in her room and hall on her electronics. Do you recall reading that record?
Not specifically.
And January 24th, 2024 would have been the year anniversary of the incident, correct?
Yes.
But if I read from page 674, you would agree with me that that's part of the Tewksbury record.
Yes, I believe it's part of the record.
And on May 26th of 2024, from page 922 of the Tewksbury record, patient monitored one-to-one for safety. She's been monitored for high suicide risks, accepted medication, says BFK and snacks. She spent some time in the TV room or sitting outside her room utilizing phone. Would you agree that that's a fair reading of page 922?
I have no reason to doubt that.
Okay, and that she's also observed on that same day, visible on the unit while utilizing her phone outside her room, was able to make her needs known appropriately. Patient was observed playing dominoes with peers in the TV room. That was later in the day on May 26, 2024, which would have been Callan's second birthday.
I would believe that that record's probably accurate. I don't remember looking at that record specifically.
How about on September 30th of 2024, page 1229 of the Tewksbury record, where it's noted that she was visible in the unit, attended startup/coffee group, assisted with she was assisted with ADLs as needed. She was in safe behavioral control for the duration of the shift. And that later it reads, patient visible in the hallways, seated in her wheelchair outside her bedroom, using her cell phone, pleasant upon approach, social with select peers. That would have been on September 30th, 2024, which would have been Dawson's 5th birthday. Do you recall reviewing that in the record?
Not off the top of my head, but I have no reason to doubt that it's not an accurate record.
December 24th, 2024, page 1442 of the Tewksbury records. It says the patient was visible on the unit utilizing her phone. Her parents were in to visit and they brought dinner with them. Patient accepted medications and fluids. Patient in good behavioral control, maintaining safety. No SIB noted or reported. What do you have reason to doubt that that's on page 1442 of the Tewksbury record?
I have no reason to doubt that that's not an accurate reflection of what took place that day.
And what's SIB?
Self-injurious behavior.
And so December 24th, 2024, that would have been Cora's 7th birthday, right?
Yes.
So January 24th, 2025, from page 1514 of the Tewksbury records, where it reads, inpatient treatment goal, to work on my mental health and to feel better. It says, she participated in morning ADL routine with staff assistance. Patient was visible on the milieu at times in the hallway utilizing her phone. No SIB has been reported this shift. Does that, do you have any reason to doubt that that's contained on page 1514?
I have no reason to doubt that.
And the further observations on that day were that the patient was visible on the unit. She was social with select staff and peers and also seen utilizing her phone. Her parents were in to visit and brought her dinner, and they brought dinner with them. That was, again, on January 24th, 2025, which would have been the second anniversary of this incident, correct?
Yes.
May 26, 2025, page 1782 of the Tewksbury records. It says, she did not engage in any SIB. She was visited by her parents this shift. She attended startup group and watched TV. That would have been on May 26, 2025, which would have been Callan's 3rd birthday. Do you have any reason to doubt that in the record?
I have no reason to doubt that.
And on September 30th, 2025 of the Tewksbury record on page 2056, reads, patient was visible in the hallway using her phone. No SIB or behavioral issues observed or reported. Do you have any doubt? Do you have reason to doubt that that is an accurate read of page 2056?
I have no reason to doubt that that's not accurate.
And that would have been September 30th, which would have been Dawson's 6th birthday, right?
Yes.
And on December 24th of 2025, page 76 of the patient notes in the Tewksbury Hospital records, it reads, ate breakfast, refused lunch, took snacks, utilizing phone, assisted with ADLs, spent some time in the TV room, attended PT, resting in bed after lunch. Do you have any reason to doubt that is contained within the Tewksbury records on page 76?
No.
And December 24th would have been Cora's 8th birthday, correct?
Yes.
And on page 152 of the Tewksbury records, January 24th, 2026 of this year. Patient observed for safety, assess mental status, encourage safe behavioral control, monitoring for abrupt behavior change and attempt to prevent escalation or self-harm, encourage patient to participate in groups. On this particular day, she was also observed compliant with meds, ate breakfast, participated in coffee group, visible in the hallway utilizing her phone, later visited with parents, and had an early lunch. That was on January 24th of 2026. Do you have any reason to doubt that's within the records?
No.
And that she was later observed to not have any SIB or behavioral issues, again on January 24th, 2026. Do you have any reason to doubt that's contained within the Tewksbury records?
No. No.
And again, you reviewed or looked at some of them, but not every one of these. But these are already currently in evidence, correct?
Yes.
Your Honor, I would move to admit these excerpts as the next exhibit, please.
Any objection? No problem. All right, that may be admitted.
One thing I'm noticing about this cross-examination, while Dr. Zeisel is really keeping his composure during it, it seems to be agitating the defendant, Lindsay Clancy, seeing some movements from her that we haven't seen much from her in this trial. Let's get to a break, and we'll talk about it more on the other side. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Court TV. Welcome back. Right now, we have been watching together the cross-examination of Dr. Paul Zeisel in the Lindsay Clancy trial. And moments ago, we noticed Clancy reacting to his testimony. Now, throughout this trial, she has primarily been very stoic and still, sometimes emotional, but really not interacting a lot with what's happening inside of the courtroom. But as he's testifying about her activities at the Tewksbury Hospital, where she has lived since this incident, we noticed her shaking her head no to some of the things during that cross-examination, and then grabbing a pen, you see her there, starting to write a note at defense counsel table to her attorney that's there sitting. I'm sure it's something that she wants to share with him. But this is more interactive, I think, than we've seen Lindsay Clancy at most of the times during this trial. And it's certainly what the prosecution wants to show about her demeanor. Someone who is in control, someone who's meticulous, and clearly believing that some of the things that the doctor is saying is not accurate in terms of what the prosecution is trying to bring out. Let's go back into court for more of that cross-examination.
Thank you.
And Dr. Zeisel, as far as the records that I just read in, do you know if in those records it indicates that she slept well on all of those occasions?
I wouldn't know. I don't know how.
Well, you would agree that noting her sleeping habits based on this particular individual's history would be an important thing for the hospital to monitor, correct?
I would agree with that.
Now, in this particular case, well, let me ask you, are you familiar with the concept of confirmation bias?
Of course.
And fair to say it's pretty prevalent in most areas of science and forensic psychology and psychiatry, correct?
It courses all domains of work and life.
And as far as confirmation bias for psychiatry or providers, fair to say that clinicians are warned that they may lean towards or support their own theories and overlook contradictory evidence. And that you have to be aware of that, correct?
Yes.
And again, in forensic psychology, the goal is to render an objective opinion, right?
Yes, the facts come to you. You don't go to the facts.
Okay. And there's a danger for clinicians and forensic psychologists of quickly forming an initial diagnosis before having all the information, correct?
Yes.
And that confirmation bias accounts for the fact that a lot of times people, clinicians and providers will cling to diagnoses and interpret subsequent information in light of that kind of already perceived idea. Is that fair to say?
They cling, I just want to make sure I understand what you're saying. They cling to a diagnosis?
Well, once a diagnosis is reached, they cling to that diagnosis when interpreting subsequent information.
That happens, yes.
And but you would agree that in practice of forensic psychology that it's important not to do that, right?
Particularly with the guidelines of criminal responsibility where you don't need a diagnosis. You just need a mental disease or defect.
But diagnoses are helpful in understanding whether the person was suffering from this legal construct of a mental disease or defect, correct?
That's fair to say.
And it's fairly accepted in the field that if somebody has a disorder or a diagnosed mental illness, that they then in turn suffer from a mental disease or defect. Or could.
Or could, because you can have a phobia. Doesn't mean you have a mental disease or defect. If you're afraid to jump out of airplanes, it can make you ineffective and have a defect or a disease. So yes, it could.
I ask you to keep your voice up.
Yes, Ron. So it could, but it doesn't always have to.
Thank you.
Of course.
And you're aware of the danger of this idea of confirmation bias of having multiple relationships and conflicts in this type of work, correct?
Yes.
And that's why it's important not to be treating somebody as a patient when you're also evaluating them for this type of legal issue, right?
Of course, you cannot be the therapist and the examiner. The therapist is an advocate. The examiner looks for the truth.
And do you recall in this case submitting recommendations to the court in November of 2025 about the defendant regarding accommodations for her?
I know in general, but I don't know specifically what those accommodations requests were. I can't remember them.
But you authored and signed a letter dated November 13th, 2025 to the court, correct?
Yes, but I'm saying I don't remember specifically what those recommendations were. I know I did that.
I'm not asking you that. I'm just asking if you wrote the letter.
Hold on. Just re-ask the question. Doctor, if you listen to the question.
Yes, sir.
I'm asking if you wrote the letter, sir.
Yes.
And in that letter, you refer to providing essential clinical findings regarding the transportation of my patient, Lindsay Clancy. Do you recall writing that?
Yes.
And so at various points throughout over the years of this case, you have referred to her as your patient, have you not?
I wouldn't be, I think, able to define her as something else. She was a patient who I did a forensic evaluation of.
Well, you referred to the court outside of this evaluation you're testifying about to her as your patient in this letter from November 13th of 2025.
Right. I evaluated Ms. Clancy, who was a patient. If I evaluated her, then she's my patient, as she is other doctors' patients at Tewksbury and other places that she's been at.
But you call her my patient in the letter.
I wrote the letter. Whose patient would I be referring to If I'm speaking about Ms. Clancy, given that she's my patient, yes, I wrote she was my patient. That's correct.
And you're aware of, again, the APA guidelines on forensic psychology, where it warns therapeutic forensic role conflicts. Providing forensic and therapeutic psychological services to the same individual involves multiple relationships that may impair objectivity and or cause exploitation or other harm. You're aware of that, section 4.02?
Yes.
And in this particular case, since the beginning, you've appeared regularly in court hearings, right?
Yes.
You've appeared with Attorney Reddington at arraignment proceedings,
At his request, yes.
both here and at Tewksbury State Hospital, where you were sitting next to the defendant.
Yes.
And you also, on February 8th of 2023, participated in a news conference, did you not?
Yes.
It was outside the courthouse here.
Yes.
And you gave an interview with the Daily News where you commented on this.
I just made a comment. That's correct.
And at this time, Your Honor, I'd like to play a clip of the news conference, please.
Mr. Reddington? Why not? All right.
Okay, while they pull up that clip, let's slip in a break, and when we come back, we'll pick it up right where we're leaving off with the testimony of Dr. Zeisel in day 15 of testimony, day 16 rather, there in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Julia Janae. Thank you for being with us as we are tracking 3 major trials this afternoon here at Court TV. We're live this hour in Plymouth, Massachusetts. The Lindsay Clancy murder trial is currently in the defense case. And right now, Dr. Paul Zeisel is testifying under cross-examination. We'll take you back into that courtroom in just a moment. In Florida, it's day 3 of the state's case in the Mario Fernandez Saldana trial. He's facing murder for hire charges in the shooting death of Jared Brightigan, a Microsoft executive who was the ex-husband of Fernandez's wife. We're keeping an eye on that case and we'll bring you updates throughout the day. And in Las Vegas, testimony resumes at 4 p.m. Eastern in the Tupac Shakur murder trial. It's day 3 of the state's case against Dwayne Keefe D. Davis. He's accused of masterminding the shooting of the rap icon back in 1996, and we'll be dipping into that trial later today. For now, we're going back to Massachusetts, where a psychologist for Lindsay Clancy told jurors on direct that in his opinion, Lindsay Clancy was bipolar and experiencing postpartum psychosis when she killed her 3 children, and that she didn't appreciate the wrongfulness of her actions. Now we're in cross-examination, and the prosecution is about to play a clip from Dr. Paul Zeisel addressing the news media in a press conference.
Say, without going too far, is that her affect is absolutely flattened. She's in a very surreal state. It feels dreamlike to her, as she's described to me on multiple occasions. And individuals who can present as being lucid, and linear, and clear thinking do not make those people not mentally ill. They have the capacity for, on occasion, to be able to do things that they've been doing for a long period of time. When you have delusional thinking, fixed beliefs that are unchangeable, and hallucinations, namely command hallucinations, telling you to do things, telling you to do things that are malevolent, and you believe those voices that are telling you you need to follow what they say, that's when things go downhill, behaviorally, psychiatrically, and familially. And that's what what we see in the most tragic of cases, where individuals who could be healthy and normal, and quite frankly, because they're paranoid and worried about what others think, they hold back on what they share. And in some cases throughout the country and the world, these are people who one day will be functioning well, but because they have the onset of command hallucinations, which they adhere to, and they believe the voice that they have to do something, that's when tragedy occurs. And I think that sort of is under the overriding rubric that this case falls under.
So, sir, on December 8th of 2023, when you provided that your observations, you had met with the defendant on 2 occasions, correct?
I believe 3 occasions.
Okay. Had you any of the records that have been presented in the course of this trial?
No.
Any of the records that are listed in your sources of information?
No.
And as you sit here and testify today, you've testified to the same conclusions, correct?
What I said was individuals like that present this way. I was not referring to Ms. Clancy. I said individuals who have these symptoms, like the ones I clarified, present that way. That was not an assessment of Ms. Clancy. That was an assessment of people who go through major mental health crises.
But as you sat here today, you've talked about the fact that she had delusional thinking, the fact that she had command hallucinations, the fact that she believed that these voices and that she was paranoid and worried. You've consistently testified about that throughout the course of yesterday and today, correct?
So
it's a yes or no.
You make it impossible to answer that question.
All right, the next question.
In addition to, you testified today that a person in a psychotic state can do things they've done before, but it might be hard for them to do new tasks, right?
Yes.
So if it's something that is part of their daily life, getting up, caring for the kids, feeding, making a meal, driving a car, those are things that people do every day and a lot of times don't even have to think about, right?
Yes. No thinking necessary.
But you're
automatic response.
You're aware that on this particular day of this incident, on January 24th of 2023, that the defendant took Cora to the doctors, right?
Yes.
And you indicated in your testimony today that it was for a regular checkup, but in your report you identified that it was for a stomach ache, right?
Yes, she had a stomach ache.
But in addition to maybe her having a stomach ache, she had previously had this visit scheduled, and you're aware of that now, correct?
Yes.
And at the doctor, there was a recommendation made for an over-the-counter medication, right?
Yes.
And the defendant was able to process that information, take it back with her, and then later, not immediately after the visit, but later in the day, search for where to get that medication, right?
Psychosis doesn't lower your intellectual functioning, so you can do all those things. So.
Let's hit the pause button on this testimony so we can bring in our guest, trial attorney Silva Megardichian, who is watching along with us. Silva, we heard that news conference that the doctor gave the same year that this happened, about 9 months after this happened. What are you thinking that the prosecution wanted to bring out? I'm thinking perhaps she's trying to say that his conclusion hasn't changed, even though he has seen Lindsay Clancy a lot more since September of 2023.
And remember, Julia, too, it's so true, but also she's trying to discredit him as much as possible. And remember, she read about the code of ethics that doctors must follow and psychologists, the fact that when they're doing a forensic evaluation, the person they're evaluating cannot be deemed a patient. So she's trying to show all of this to show that he had a dog in the fight, that he has a bias, and that all of his testimony should be discredited because he viewed Lindsay more than just a neutral party. And that's going to be essential in the DA's closing argument. We've seen this so much that this defense expert has too much biases and did not evaluate her the way that she should have been. Her doctors did a better job in evaluating her. It's all about discreditation. And Julia, it goes back to what we've said for years that we've been together. Everything you say outside of a courtroom, whether for media or otherwise, will be used in a court of law in some capacity out of context and to prove another point by whichever party wants to discredit you. And we have it again here. So she has a direction, Julia, and she's going full blast. She wants to show bias, that he's not a credible expert, and honestly, that she believes that he didn't review enough or memorize her medical history enough to be credible. Let's see what the jury thinks at the end of the day.
And it's a big deal that he's one of the only medical providers who wrote down in medical records that she was hearing voices. I want to also ask you about this moment that we showed earlier from Lindsay Clancy at the defense table. And typically, this particular moment at a defense table is not unusual. Defendants always are writing, they're responding, they're talking to their attorneys. But if we could show it, it did seem unusual for Lindsay Clancy. We don't typically see her engaging with what's happening inside of the courtroom. We see her reacting by pulling a tissue maybe and dabbing her eyes. But what did you think about that moment, Silva?
Julia, it was interesting. Just like you, the cameras have been great at showing her stoicism, the fact that nothing has really affected you other than the unbelievable emotion and the outbursts from the autopsies and the testimony of her three children being murdered, right? It was a shock to me too. She has been so stoic, but again, it's very difficult for clients to sit through DA's cross-examination and taking things out of context. I've seen it in every trial I've done where even the most psychotic of clients who sits absolutely quiet, absolutely with no emotion, a DA will strike a chord with them by taking something out of context, and they can't hold it in. They so much want to tell me, this is not true, it's out of context. As attorneys, we're trained to find these. We don't necessarily need our clients to point this out, but the jury is seeing everything. They are noting everything Lindsay is doing at that counsel table. She looks incredibly controlled and wrote something obviously for her attorney. It'll be interesting to see how the jury responds to this. But Julia, it's imperative that Reddington in redirect tells and asks the doctor to reiterate, does someone in this condition, can they be normal at times? As the doctor said, it doesn't affect them, their education or their intelligence. Reddington needs to educate this jury that a person with this level of psychosis can have periods of normalcy and periods of mental illness.
He
and
has
also,
said it.
is she still in that?
Yeah, he has said it time and time again, and I bet you he's going to say it again in the redirect. We're going to be listening for it. Silva, stand by. Let's get to our break. When we come back, more of that cross-examination inside of the courtroom. We are following together live the coverage of day 16 inside of the Lindsay Clancy murder trial. Let's go right back in for more cross-examination of Dr. Zeisel on the stand.
Do all those things. So
Well,
that's
that
correct.
wasn't my question. My question was, did she do those things?
Yes, so that's correct.
Okay. And you've talked a lot about that a person can operate as normally as they can, but fair to say, if you're in a psychotic state, that person themselves has a significant amount of distress, right?
Yes.
And that in order to mask those symptoms, it requires an enormous amount of control. Does it not?
It depends on the level and the extremism of the psychotic processing. So some people will hear voices that are nominal, they whisper. Some people hear voices that are yelling and screaming. So it's on a range, it's a continuum. So the more upsetting, more powerful, demanding the voice, the more difficult it might be to resist it and do other things. The less, the easier it is.
In all of the time between September of 2022 and January 23rd of 2023. At any point in which the defendant heard these voices about harming herself, she didn't act on them then, did she?
That's correct, yes. She did not act on those. She sought help instead.
One moment, please. Your Honor, I would move to admit the recording played as the next exhibit.
I'm sorry, the what?
The recording that was played, I move to enter it as the next exhibit, please.
That may be admitted.
If I can find it. Here it is. Thank you.
284.
Thank you.
I have no further questions at this time.
Let's talk about confirmation.
Can I sit down, please?
Oh, hold on. But Ms. Buckingham,
Thank you.
have a seat.
Confirmation bias. In the field of forensics, interface of science and the law, trial of cases, hiring experts, having people give an opinion that a jury is going to listen to. Confirmation bias means that the individual might want to help out the person that they're testifying for. Is that right?
It can be, yes.
So in other words, if you have a shooting case and you're a ballistics guy, and without the ballistics showing that the defendant's gun shot the victim, the government has no case, they may send an email to that witness and say, hey, I really need your help here. And that might influence them, right?
Yes.
Now, you got involved with this case, as you indicated, out of my request, obviously,
Yes.
compassion.
Correct.
The fact you had a young lady that was literally in extreme condition, emotionally, physically, you went to speak with her, correct?
I did, yes.
Do you care for her?
I do.
And is that a violation of the canon of ethics for professionals like you if you care for your patient?
Not at all. Within the ethical standards, it's also noted to do an appropriate and meaningful forensic evaluation. It's strongly suggested you develop empathy and rapport. And when you have those two psychological constructs, you get more information from the respondent. You do not cherry pick the information. You include warts and all in your report. That avoids confirmatory bias, and you avoid confirmatory bias by also not looking at conclusions that other examiners come up with when they render their opinions, and you do your evaluations independent of anyone else. You do it by yourself.
How many times did you see her?
At the time that my report was
No, right about now.
60 times.
How many hours have you put in sitting with Lindsay, either in the hospital or evaluating?
More than that, roughly.
And
We've reached the top of the hour. Got to get to a break. When we come back, though, we'll pick it up right where we're leaving off there. Day 16, the case against Lindsay Clancy with her psychologist on the stand.